It's great to have you here on your first agricultural TV station. My name remains Joshua Ishaya, your fish man. In fact, you can call me the Aqua man because I make sure I go to the nitty-gritty of every aspect of the things that are in the aquatic world, just to bring it to your forefront to know how lucrative it is and how sustainable it can be to generate into the GDP of the nation. Today we're looking at nutrition of fish. Good nutrition in animal production system is essential to economical production of a healthy, high-quality product. In fish farming, which is aquaculture, nutrition is critical because feed typically represent approximately 50% of the variable production cost. A very warm welcome to the program Aqua Farming. My name is Joshua Isha. Welcome you to a fresh edition of the program. My God. Today we'll be looking at the topic understanding fish nutrition feed and feeding. Please stay tuned and take a look.
Good nutrition in animal system production is essential to economical production of a healthy, high-quality product in fish farming. Nutrition is critical because feed typically represent approximately 50% of the variable production costs. Fish nutrition has advanced dramatically in recent years, with the development of few balanced commercial diets that promote optimal fish growth and health. The development of new species-specific diet formulation supports the aquaculture industry as it expands to satisfy increasing demand for affordable fish, high-quality fish, and seafood products. Prepared or artificial feed can be either complete or supplemental. Complete diets supply all the ingredients, protein, carbohydrate, fats, vitamins and minerals necessary for the optimal growth and health of the fish. Most fish farmers use complete diet typically made up of the following components, and the percentage ranges: protein 18 to 50%, lipid 10 to 25%, carbohydrate 15 to 20%, phosphorus 1.5%, water 10%, and trace amounts of vitamins and minerals. The nutritional content of the feed depends on what species of feed is being cultured and at what life stage. When fish are reared in high-density indoor system or confined in cages and cannot forage freely on natural food, for example, algae, aquatic plants, aquatic invertebrates, they must be provided a complete diet. In contrast, supplemental diets are intended only to help support the natural food normally available to fish in ponds or outdoor. Raceway supplemental diets do not contain a full complement of vitamins or minerals, but are typically used to help fortify the natural available diet with extra protein, carbohydrates, or lipids. Now, let's talk about protein. Because protein is the most expensive component of fish feed, it's important to accurately determine the protein requirement for each species and life stage cultured. Proteins are formed by linkages of individuals' amino acid. Although more than 200 amino acids occur in nature, only about 20 amino acids are common. Of these, 10 are essential, indispensable amino acids that cannot be synthesized by fish. The 10 essential amino acids that must be supplied by the diet are methionine, arginine, threonine, tryptophan, histidine, isoleucine, lysine, leucine, valine, and phenylalanine. Of these, lysine and methionine are often the first limiting amino acids. Fish protein levels in aquaculture feed generate average 30 to 35% for shrimps, 28 to 32% for catfish, 35 to 40% for tilapia, 38 to 42% for hybrid striped bass, and 40 to 45% for trout and other marine fishes. In general, protein requirements are typically lower for herbivorous fish and omnivorous fish than they are for carnivorous fish. Protein requirements are higher for fish reared in high-density systems compared to low-density culture. Protein required are generally high for small as well as early life stage fish. As fish grow larger, their protein requirement usually decrease. Protein requirements also vary with rearing environment, water temperature, and water quality, as well as the genetic composition and feeding rates of the fish. Protein is used for fish growth if adequate levels of fats and carbohydrates are present in the diet. If not, the more expensive protein can be used for energy and life support rather than growth. Proteins are composed of carbon 50%, nitrogen 16%, oxygen 21%, and hydrogen 6.5%. Another element. Fish are capable of using a high protein diet, but as much as 65% of the protein can be lost to the environment. Most nitrogen protein required are generally higher for smaller as well as early life stage. As fish grow larger, their protein requirements usually decreases. Protein requirements also vary with the rearing environment, water temperature, and water quality, as well as the genetic composition and feeding rates of the fish. Protein is used for fish growth of adequate levels of fats and carbohydrates are present in the diet. If not, the more expensive protein can be used for energy and life support rather than growth. Protein are composed of carbon 50%, nitrogen 16%, oxygen 21.5%, and hydrogen 6.5%, and other elements 6.0%. Fish are capable of using a high protein diet, but as much as 65% of the protein can be lost to the environment. Most nitrogen is excreted as ammonia from the gills of fish, and only 10% is excreted as solid waste. Eutrophication surface water due to excess nitrogen from fish farm. Affluents can be a significant water quality concern for fish farmers. Appropriate feeds, feeding strategies, and waste management practices are essential to protect downstream water quality. Let's look at lipids. Lipids are high energy nutrients that can be utilized to partially spare protein in aquaculture feeds. Lipids have about twice the energy density of proteins and carbohydrates. Lipids typically make up about 7 to 15% of fish diets, supply essential fatty acids, and serve as transporter for fat-soluble vitamins. A recent trend in fish feed is to use high level of lipids in the diet. While increasing dietary lipids can help reduce the high cost of feed, by partially sparing protein in the feeds, problems such as excessive fat disposition in the liver can decrease fish health quality and shelf-of-life of the final product. Simple lipids include fatty acid and triglycerols. Fish typically require fatty acids of about omega-3 and 6. Marine fish and algal oil are naturally high in omega-3, highly unsaturated fatty acids, and an excellent source of lipids for the manufacture of fish diets. Lipids from these sources can be deposited into fish muscles. People who then consume these fillets could enjoy the healthy benefits of consuming food rich in omega-3 fatty acids, such as reduced symptoms of depression and improve cardiovascular health. Marine fish typically require omega-3 fatty acid for optimal growth and health, usually in quantities ranging from 0.5 to 2.0% of the dry diet. The two major essential fatty acids of this group are eicosapentaenic. Freshwater fish cannot elongate and desaturate linoleic acid using enzyme system, resulting in longer chain omega-3 fatty, which are necessary for other metabolic function and as cellular membrane components. Marine fish typically do not possess these elongation and desaturation enzyme system and require long-chain omega-3 fatty acids in their diet. Other fish species such as tilapia require fatty acids of the 6 family, while others such as catfish require a combination of 3 and 6 fatty acids. Carbohydrates, starch, and sugar are the least expensive source of energy for fish diets, although not essential carbohydrates included in aquaculture diets to reduce feed costs and for their binding activity during feed manufacturing. Dietary starches are useful in the extrusion manufacture of floating feeds. Cooking starch during the extrusion process make it more biologically available to fish. In fish, carbohydrates are stored as glycogen that can be mobilized to satisfy energy demands. They are a major energy source for mammals but are not used efficiently by fish. For example, mammal can extract about 4 calories of energy from 1 gram of carbohydrate, whereas fish can only extract about 1.6 calories from the same amount of carbohydrate. Fish can use up to 20% of dietary carbohydrates. Vitamins. Vitamins are organic compounds necessary in diet to support normal fish growth and health. They are often not synthesized by fish and must be provided in the diet. The two groups of vitamins are water soluble and fat soluble. Water soluble vitamins include B vitamins. Fat soluble vitamins include vitamin A. The deficiency of each vitamin has specific symptoms, but reduced growth is the most common symptoms of any vitamin deficiency. Scoliosis, bent backbone symptoms, and dark coloration may result from deficiencies of ascorbic acid and folic acid, respectively. Minerals are inorganic elements necessary in the diet for normal body function. They can be divided into two groups, macrominerals and microminerals, based on the quantity required in the diet and the amount present in the fish. Fish can absorb many minerals directly from the water through their gills and skin, allowing them to compensate to some extent for mineral deficiencies in their diets. Common dietary microminerals are calcium, sodium, chloride, potassium, chlorine, sulfur, and phosphorus, and magnesium. These minerals regulate osmotic balance and aid in bone formation and integrity. Common microminerals are iron, copper, chromium, iodine, manganese, zinc, and selenium. These trace minerals are required in small amounts as components in enzyme and hormone system. Energy and protein. Dietary nutrients are essential for the construction of living tissue. They also are a source of stored energy for fish digestion, absorption, growth, reproduction, and other life processes. The nutritional value of a dietary ingredient is in part dependent on its ability to supply energy. Psychological fold value are used to calculate the balance available energy values in prepared diets. They typically average 4 to 4.9 calories per gram for protein, carbohydrates, and lipids, respectively. To create an optimum diet, the ratio of protein to energy must be determined independently for each fish species. Excess energy relative to product content in the diet can result in high lipid disposition. Because fish feed in order to meet their energy requirements, diets with excessive energy levels may result in decreased feed intake and reduced weight gain. Similarly, a diet with inadequate energy content can result in reduced weight gain because the fish cannot eat enough feed to satisfy their energy requirement for growth. Properly formulated prepared feed have a well-balanced energy to protein ratio. To create an optimum diet, the ratio of protein to energy must be determined independently for each fish species. Excess energy relative to protein content in the diet can result in the high lipid disposition. Because fish feed in order to meet their energy requirements, diet most excessive energy levels may result in decreased feed intake and reduced weight gain. Similarly, a diet with inadequate energy content can result in reduced weight gain because the fish cannot eat enough feed to satisfy their energy requirements for growth. Properly formulated prepared feed have a well-balanced energy to protein ratio. Now, let's look at fish feed. Commercial feed diets are manufactured as either extruded or pressure palated, that is floating or sinking feeds. Both floating and sinking feeds can produce satisfactory growth, but some fish species prefer floating. Other sinking shrimp, for example, will not accept a floating feed, but most fish species can be trained to accept a floating pellet. Intruded feed are more expensive due to the high manufacturing costs. Usually, it is advantageous for feed a floating extruded feed because the farmer can directly observe the feeding intensity of his fish and adjust feed rates accordingly. Determining whether the feeding rates are too low or too high is important in maximizing fish growth and feed use efficiency. Feed is available in a variety of sizes, ranging from the crumbles for small fish to large pellets The palate size should be approximately 20 to 30% of the size of the fish mouth gap. Feeding too small a palate results in an inefficient feeding because more energy is used in finding and eating more pellets. Conversely, palates are too large will depress feeding and can in the extreme cause choking. Select the largest size feed the fish will actively eat. Feed manufacturers will often provide a feed pallet size guide for different species and life stages. Feeding rate, frequency, and timing. Feeding rates and frequency are in a part of function of feed or fish size. Small larval fish and fry need to be fed a high protein diet frequently and usually in excess. Small fish have a high energy demand and must eat nearly continuously and be fed almost hourly. Feeding small fish in excess is not as much as of a problem as overfeeding larger fish because small fish require only a small amount of feed relative to the volume of water in the culture system. As fish grow, feeding rates, frequencies, and feed proteins content should be reduced. However, rather than switching to a lower protein diet, feeding less may allow the grower to use the same feed throughout the grow out period, thereby simplifying feeds, inventory, and shortage. Feeding fish is labor intensive and expensive. Feeding frequency is dependent on labor availability, farm size, production system, and the fish species and sizes grown. Large catfish farm with many ponds usually feed only once per day because of time and labor limitations, while smaller farm may feed twice per day. General growth and feed conversion increase with feeding frequency. In indoor intensive fish culture system, fish might be fed as many as 5 times per day in order to maximize growth at optimum temperature. Many factors affect the feeding rate of fish. These include the life stage, time of day, season, water temperature, dissolved oxygen level, and other water quality variables. For example, feeding fish grown in ponds early in the morning when the lowest dissolved oxygen levels occur is not advisable. In contrast, in recirculating aquaculture system where oxygen is continuously supplied, fish can be fed at nearly any time during the winter and at low water temperature. Feeding rates of warm water fish in ponds decline and should decrease proportionally. Feed acceptability, palatability, and digestibility vary with the ingredients and feed quality. Fish farmers pay careful attention to feeding activity in order to help determine feed acceptance, calculate feed conservation ratio and feeding efficiencies, monitor feed cost, and track feed demand throughout the year. Published feeding rates tables are available for most common cultural fish species. Farmers can calculate optimum feeding rates based on the average size and length or weight and number of fish in the tank, race, or pond. Automatic feeders. Fish can be fed by hand, by automatic feeders, and by demand feeders. Many fish farmers like to hand feed their fish each day to ensure that the fish are healthy. Feeding vigorously and exhibiting no problem large catfish farms often drive feed trucks with compressed and air blowers to distribute feed uniformly throughout the pond. There is a variety of automatic feeders ranging in design from the belt feeders that walk in wind upsprings to electric vibrant feeders to time feeders that can be programmed to feed hourly and for extended period. Demand feed do not require electricity or batteries. They usually are suspended above the fish tank and raceways and work by allowing the fish to trigger feed release by striking a moving rod that extends into the water. Whenever a fish strikes the trigger, a small amount of feed is released into the tank. Automatic and demand feeders save time, labor and money, but the expense of the vigilance that comes with hand feeding. Some growers use night light and bus zappers to attract and kill flying insects and bugs to provide supplementary source of natural food for their fish. Now, let's talk about the efficiency. Now, let's talk about food conservation and efficiency calculation. Because feed is expensive, feed conversion ratio for feed efficiency are important calculation for the grower. They can be used to determine if feed is being used as efficiently as possible. Feed conversion ratio is calculated as the weight of the feed fed to the fish divided by the weight of fish growth. For example, if fish are fed 10 pounds of feed and then exhibit 5 pounds weight gain, feed efficiency is simply the reciprocal of the feed conversion ratio in the example above. Therefore, if fish are fed pounds of fish and exhibit pound weight gain, in addition to growth, some of the energy in feed is usually by the fish metabolic and digestive processing, respiratory nerve impulses, salt balance, swimming, and other living activities. Feed conversion ratio will vary among species size and activity level of fish environment parameters and cultural system use. Now, let's talk about feed, care, and storage. Commercial fish feed is usually purchased by large farms and box feed and truckloads and stored outside bays. Smaller farms also buy prepared feed in 50 pounds bags. Bagged feed should be kept out of direct sunlight and as cool as possible. Vitamin, proteins, and lipids are especially heat sensitive and can be readily denatured by high storage temperatures. High moisture stimulates mold growth and feed decomposition. Avoid unnecessary handling and damage to the feed bags that could break the pellets and create fins that will not be consumed by fish. Fish should not be stored longer than 90 to 100 days and should be inventoried regularly. Bags should not be stacked more than 10 high because the excessive weight from the upper bag will crush pellets and lower bags, creating excessive fins, dust. All the feed should be used first, and all fish should be regularly inspected for mold prior to feeding. All moldy feed should be discarded immediately. Mice, rats, roaches, and other pests should be strictly controlled in the feed storage.
The Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria (ARCN) coordinates the activities of research institutes and is responsible for supervision, regulation, coordination of research activities and programs of higher institutions in Nigeria. I'm Professor Hamidou Shaributu since assumption as Executive Secretary of ARCN in April 2020 has solidified the transformation of agriculture in Nigeria through strategic and meaningful execution of research fundings for improvement of the agricultural sector.
For grains, we have the parabolic solar dryers. These are specialized solar dryers used for drying agricultural produce such as whole grains, yam and cassava chips, fruits and vegetables more efficiently. It is made of a special material that concentrates the rays of the sun within the enclosure while eliminating harmful ultraviolet radiation. Products dried are free from contaminants and are hygienic.
The parabolic shaped solar dryer is a need-based technology because virtually when we travel all over the country, you will see by the roadside, you see people drying all sorts of agricultural produce. Some spread their own on bare ground, and by the time the vehicles are moving, the dust stay on the products. The reptiles will come, they will eat whatever they can eat, drop their feces and their urine on it, and the owner comes in the evening to pack everything together and still eat that product. And the product has been contaminated, and we feel this is not right, and it is part of our mandate to make sure that we set it right, and that was what led to this, so that we can solve this problem at the grassroots level. Instead of drying by the roadside, drying on just bare ground in their villages, when they have this as a drying center, everybody in the community can bring their product there, spread on the tray, and they get it dry under hygienic condition that is covered. And the dryer also have another property to screen the ultraviolet ray of the sun, which is also can cause hazard to human health.
Since then, Professor Shaributu has operated as visionary captain by restoring the council's glory with the first ever agricultural television and radio station in Nigeria, with well-equipped studios parading state-of-the-art equipment.
The Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria also has a brand new electronic library to further promote research and visualizations of deep thoughts on agricultural development in Nigeria.
The museum, located in the Senator Abdullahi Adamu Center, is an agricultural museum saddled with the responsibility of keeping records of agricultural findings, discoveries, researches for continuity and history purposes.
The Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria is wearing a new look under the stewardship of Professor Garba Hamidu Shaributu, who says, "Alone I am nothing, but together I am something." ARCN,
promoting agriculture. On that note, we come to the end of aqua farming, where we discuss the topic understanding fish nutrition, feeds and feeding. My name remains Joshua Ishaya. Thanking you for watching. Bye for now.